Before I dive in and start putting these new cables on, I just want to kind of introduce them a little bit. So this is from jeepcables.com. It's the Big 7 kit, full replacement cable set, and I'm thoroughly impressed with this kit. It was not cheap, but I think it was worth every penny. It comes with a new external fuse. This is just the fuse box, the fuses right there. That is for between the alternator and the relay or the box. And then to make it easy, you can see on each cable, on each end, they have labeled what it attaches to, so there's no guesswork on the lengths or anything like that. Super well thought out. Positive battery, relay, fender, firewall, etc. So you know exactly where each one of these cables should go. You may have noticed I already have one attached to the alternator, and that's because I had to fit the housing a little bit where it attaches. But that's why that one's out. The rest of them are here, and while I've got space in there with the alternator out, I'm going to go ahead and replace some of these. So that's what I'm going to do next before I put the alternator back in. It's a pretty decent day out. Got some sunshine. It's about 40 degrees, which for this time of year is really mild. Not a bad day to do a little work outside. So let's get after these battery cables. I am a little bit confused about some of the area up here. Maybe going into this relay, particularly like alternator fuse process, but I'll figure that out as I go. I'll let you know as I'm doing that. I'm going to start with the one in the back, which is this one right here. Firewall to engine block. That's one of the grounds. So it is that black one right there. I see firewall on that. I'll pull that out and see what we got. This does attach something back there under that clip. I'm told it's not the easiest to get to. Actually, I think I may see it. Yep, it's that long bolt. I don't know if you can see it. There's a long bolt right there. I'll have to pull the nut off. It's not the greatest access, but I'll make it. Alright, first cable is on. Of course, not as easy as it seems it would be. I could not get that back bolt to break free at the angle I had. I even tried removing the fuel rail so I could have a more straight shot with a box end wrench. Just could not get it. So I ended up just moving forward one bolt, which I think should be just fine. And in all actuality, based on the length of this particular cable, I think that might be a better spot anyway. So we'll call that one good and go on to the next one. Alright, the next one I'm going to tackle is the battery negative. This one to engine block, which it was under a loom that this loom that I've partially pulled off. It goes here behind the fuel filter and kind of up there on the engine block, and I'm told that that is a 1/2 inch bolt right there. So I'll grab a 1/2 inch and see if I can get in there and pull that one. That one came off relatively easy. It is, you probably can't tell, but pretty oily down there from previous leaks, and so bolt was pretty lubed up. Light twist, it popped off. But here is evidence of why it's really necessary for me to upgrade these cables. This negative wire being exposed isn't particularly a big deal, so a mechanic has told me. However, the insulation on the positive wire, you can see, just is peeling right off, as is this one. And I'm going to short out here sooner than later. So it's definitely time to get this taken care of. One more quick note on the bolt that I pulled this off of that's on the engine block. There were at least 2 other connectors on there. So just word to the wise, if you do this, make sure that you remember to put those back on so that everything works. Okay, black to, or negative I should say, to engine block is on. I hope the rest of them go that smooth. And then the last negative one I have here is battery to fender. And I'm thinking the ideal spot would be just right here. I'm tempted to tap something into the sub fender, but I think this will work, and that would be probably the ideal spot to put the new fuse coming up a little bit later. So this is probably the best option. Now if you still have the hood brace that swings up from about right here, attaching it to this spot probably won't work, because this will prevent it from going all the way down. I have hood struts on mine, aftermarket installed. That's in another video you can find if you're interested. So this will work fine for me because I don't have that interference. Alright, we're in. All the negatives are connected. I now have some an extra connection, this one here to the fender, that the original didn't have, and I'm happy, at least in thought, with that redundancy. So with that, it's time to start working on the positives, and the one I'm going to start with is battery to starter, which I believe is the other one that was coming apart, which is this big one right here. Okay, other than a sprinkle of dirt in my eye, this came off reasonably well and definitely due to be replaced, especially with that negative one also showing some bare wire. So alright, the starter wire is now on without too much further trouble. These wires do seem to be just slightly longer than the old ones, which is okay, but like the battery negative right here, that one, and now the starter don't totally line up the way that they used to. So I don't know if I can loom both of those together as they once were. We'll see. That's a problem I can and will solve later. Next one I'm going to put on is the battery positive right there to the relay, which should replace this little guy right here. Okay, as I am now starting to deal with the wires that go into the relay, it is time for me to figure out the thing I'm most confused about, and that is this wire that goes to the alternator. I have a new alternator wire that goes from the alternator to the fuse, and so I need to figure out where this wire goes. I'm thinking it also goes to the solenoid, and it is now being eliminated because it's got the fuse in between. So I really just need to pull this out of the loom and just see where the other end is, and that'll probably answer my questions. I have now gotten the alternator wire fished out of the loom, and now things are making more sense, because it looked like initially that it was maybe running into like that plug connector, and that's where I was kind of confused. But it turns out that it just didn't go that far. It comes out of the loom earlier than that and does go into the solenoid. So I've got the battery to solenoid wire to remove and the alternator, and then these two take their place, and then the alternator has a fuse that interrupts one of those lines, just a safety precaution, which is totally fine. So not as different as I initially imagined. All right, all the new cables are installed, running where they are supposed to. I've got my positives going to the starter and the relay or solenoid. Solenoid to fuse. The alternator to fuse is going to be the other one here, so that's really the last thing I have to put on.